So let us look at what we call specialized cells in plants. What you see on the image or on the slide is a picture of a tree. This tree is definitely made up of many cells, and these cells are not the same, and that means that they don't carry out the same kind of functions. So we want to look at the different cells and the different cells that make up the plant and what roles do they actually perform in a plant, and what happens if indeed there is a damage to any of these cells. That's what we are going to look at in this section. And we definitely start this using a scenario. So a garden manager notices that some tomato and lettuce plants are thriving while others are actually struggling, and she asks for your help to investigate. You decide to examine the specialized cells in the plants to understand how they contribute to growth and survival. Using a microscope, you prepare slides from the roots, stems, and leaves of a healthy tomato plant and a wilting lettuce plant. You also conduct simple tests to check water movement and nutrient uptake. Your task is to identify the specialized cells, explain their roles, and suggest why the lettuce might be struggling. Okay, so the first question is, while examining the tomato's root slide, you observe cells with long, thin extensions. Name these specialized cells and describe their structure. Explain how their structure helps the plant to survive. In the second question, in the stem of the tomato plant, you identify two types of tube-like cells responsible for transport. Name these two types of cells and explain their specific functions in the plant. How do their structures differ to support these roles? The third question is, under the microscope, the lettuce plant's leaf cells appear flat and tightly packed and contain many green organelles, but some areas look damaged. Identify these cells and their primary function and suggest one reason why damage to these cells might cause the lettuce to wilt. Okay, so this scenario is going to enable us to know the different types of cells that are responsible for the health of the plants. If a plant is, for example, wilting, it means that certain types of cells are not working well. So what are those cells? Okay, and what type of, or what kind of damage can happen to these cells, and what will happen as a result of this damage? So let's start. Plants have specialized cells that perform different functions. That means that plants are actually multicellular, that they have several cells, and these cells can perform several functions, but you have specific cells that perform specific or particular functions. And this is very important for growth of the plant, for reproduction, and also survival of the plants. Why? Because the fact that you have different cells doing different functions, it means that is specialization. And when we have specialization, it means that the plants are able to adapt to their environment and carry out life processes more effectively or more efficiently. So we start with the first type of specialized cells in the plant. We call them root hairs. The root hairs, their function is to basically absorb water and mineral salts from the soil. These are basically extensions, and we are saying that they are microscopic extensions of the roots So that means that you might not actually see them with your naked eye. That's why we are terming them microscopic. There are usually very many, and this is very important because it increases the surface area for the absorption pattern. They are not covered with a thin cell wall. That means that it is very easy for water absorption and mineral absorption to actually happen because these root hairs actually have thin cell walls. Okay, so that makes them very, very, very important in water absorption. There are very, very many. And if you can look at the picture that we have on the slide, is that these get here. This is the root hair here. Numerous microscopic extensions that are very important in water absorption and mineral absorption. So they have a cell membrane, a cell wall that is very thin, cytoplasm, and the nucleus. And then we go to the second category of specialized cells in plants. These ones are called mesophyll cells. Mesophyll cells are of two types. We have the two types, the palisade mesophyll cells, and then the spongy mesophyll cells. They are very, very important for the process of photosynthesis. The arrangement of these cells, the palisade mesophyll cells and the spongy mesophyll cells, the arrangement is quite different, and we shall know why is that arrangement different and what advantage does this arrangement actually provide. So in our image, that is a cross section. The whole of this is a cross. It's when you cut through the leaf. Okay, the leaf appears very thin, yes, but inside that leaf, when you use a microscope, you'll be able to see different types of cells. So you have the first layer of cells, the surface cells. These ones are the ones that we call the epidermal cells. So we have the upper epidermis and then definitely the lower epidermis. The cells that cover the covering, the cells that cover the surface of the leaves are the ones that we call the epidermal cells. Okay, so that means that they actually form layers. So we have the upper epidermis layer and then the lower epidermis layer. Okay, so that's the first category of cells. Now, when you enter inside the leaf, you have the two types of the mesophyll cells. This first layer here is what you call the palisade layer, which consists of the palisade mesophyll cells. And then the next layer here, those are the sponge mesophyll cells. Okay, so you can see that the palisade mesophyll cells up here, for them, they are actually rectangular. Okay, they are rectangular and contain a lot of organelles that we call the chloroplasts. The chloroplasts are the ones that contain chlorophyll. And you know that chlorophyll is very important for the process of photosynthesis. Okay, so what is the importance of this? With the palisade mesophyll cells containing very many chloroplasts, it means that they are well positioned to capture light energy. Okay, they are in position to capture sunlight energy. Okay, and the fact that they are numerous means that they can capture sufficient amount of sunlight energy. The second thing that they are actually tightly packed, as you can see in this image, they are tightly packed. That means that it's also an advantage because more light will actually be captured because of that. Because you have the chloroplast being concentrated more because of the close packing of this palisade mesophyll cell. So the spongy mesophyll cells are these ones. They are circular. They do not have a lot of chloroplast. Because of the fact that they are circular and not closely packed, it means that they have air spaces, and these air spaces are very important for the process of gaseous exchange in the leaves. Okay, so that means that oxygen and carbon dioxide can easily move within that layer. Okay. So we look at what we call the phloem tissue or the phloem cells. These are actually responsible for transportation of organic compounds such as sucrose. That is a complicated word, right? But we can use the term, the fact that the phloem is actually responsible for transport of food. Okay, remember the plants make their own foods. That means that they make their own starch, but this starch has to be moved to other places. Okay, so the phloem actually consists of tubes. We have what we call the sieve tubes. These ones are connected end to end. You can see that the sieve tube is here, and in between at different levels, you have what you call sieve plates, which have holes that we call the sieve holes. So that means that it is through these sieve tubes that you can have this food being transported. Okay, the process of transporting this food requires energy, and this phloem tissue actually has what we call companion cells. These companion cells provide the energy that is required for this transport. There are also cytoplasmic filaments that are also very important in this transport. Xylem vessels are also very important. They are also transport tissues, so they transport water and mineral salts. Okay, for them, they have lignin, which is a substance that helps in providing that support that is needed for that movement of water to happen. Okay, they have narrow lumen, that is the opening inside is what we call a lumen. And the fact that lumen is narrow, it means you have enough capillary action happening. If you have a wide tube, you have little capillary action. But when you have a narrow tube, you have strong capillarity. Okay, so they lack what we call cross or end walls. That means that the water actually moves continuously. And then we can talk about the gut cells. These ones are around the stomata. You know that the stomata, the openings on the leaves that allow for gaseous exchange. Now, these stomata have to be opened and closed when necessary, depending on the weather conditions. And therefore, the gut cells actually do this role. They make sure that they can open or close the stomata for gaseous exchange. Okay, these gut cells are actually bean shaped, and that contributes to the fact that they can be able to open and even close. We have different mechanisms that can be used to explain how these stomata actually close or open. But one of such a mechanism is when water enters the gut cells and causing the swelling such that you can have opening of the stomata. Okay, so that means that the gut cells should have chloroplasts to make sure that they can carry out photosynthesis, and this photosynthesis will give us the sugar that will attract the water, causing the gut cells to swell and therefore opening the stomata. Okay, so that means that the opening and the closure of the stomata is determined by the extent of water that is inside, but also the extent to which you can have that expansion. So you have thicker, thin outer walls and the thick inner walls. That means that it is easy to have expansion because of the thin outer wall, and this contributes to the opening and closure of the stomata. So going back to our question, We have plants that are doing well and other plants are not doing well, others are wilting. So what's the problem? We want to cut into this the stem and also want to cut into the roots and also check the leaves and see whether the cells that we expect there are actually carrying out their usual functions. If there is a problem with any of the cells that we find there, it means that they are not carrying out their usual functions, and therefore there is a problem that has to be addressed. So that means that when you get the tomato plant's root, remember the tomato plant in our scenario is healthy. So you get the root and you examine it using a microscope. Definitely you will see some extensions, which are basically the root hair that we have talked about. The long, thin extensions that you're going to see on the slide. These are the root hair. These are very important in absorption of water and mineral salts. We already looked at that already. Okay, so what makes them very good at doing whatever they do, that is done at what makes them good at water absorption and mineral salt absorption, is because of the fact that they're actually very many. They are numerous, that is one. They have a thin wall, that is two. But also they are numerous, that increases the surface area for absorption. They are thin, that means that it is very easy to absorb water and mineral salts. Okay, so the second question is that now you move to the stem of the tomato plant. This time you will see tube-like structures. These tube-like structures, what are they? They are those that are actually used for transportation of food and then transportation of water and mineral salts. So that means that you have the phloem and the xylem. Okay, so those are the tubes that you will definitely see. So those are the two types of cells that you find there. Okay, the xylem is for transportation of water and mineral salts, and the phloem would be the ones that are used for transportation of food. Okay, basically the sugars. So the other question was, how do their structures differ to support their roles? For example, for the xylem, we say that they are elongated and they don't have this end points. That means that the tube is continuous and they're also narrow. So the fact that they are narrow, it means that they have there is strong capillary action. They have lignin. That means that they can provide support, enable that transport to happen. And then for the phloem, they have the companion cells that have mitochondria for production of energy. Okay, including the fact that the phloem is actually living tissue, and that means that it can carry out numerous metabolic activities. So the last part is now we are getting the wilting lettuce plant. That means that there is a problem. So with this, you examine the leaves, and when you're examining these leaves, you see cells that are flat and tightly packed, containing numerous green organelles, but some areas look damaged. Okay, so that means that some areas of the leaf actually look damaged. So what cells are these? Identify the cells and their primary function. Suggest one reason why damage to the cells may actually cause the lotus to wilt. So the leaves have palisade and mesophyll cells. That's what you find there. These cells are important for the process of photosynthesis. The palisade cells, for example, contain numerous chloroplasts that trap sunlight. That is very important for the process of photosynthesis. Now, if you have damage to these cells, it means that photosynthesis will not be carried out at the usual rate. So it will not be an efficient process. And that contributes to the wilting that you see in the lotus plant. Thank you.